Welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon. The lecture is on rehabilitation robotics, improving everyday human functions, and I'm thrilled you all could join us. It's quality, not quantity. My name is Alan Silberstein. I'm a class of '69 graduate. I studied metallurgical engineering, but as my career has taken me farther and farther from real engineering, I find opportunities like today delightful because it gets me back in touch with why I became an engineer in the first place. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Sunil K. Agarwal. Professor Agarwal received his PhD degree in mechanical engineering from Stanford University in 1990. He's currently professor and director of robotics and rehabilitation, that's ROAR, laboratory at Columbia, located both in engineering and the medical campuses. Dr. Agarwal has published more than 500 journal and conference papers, 18 U.S. patents, and 3 books. He's a fellow of the ASME and the AIMBE. His honors include an NSF Presidential Faculty Fellowship from the White House in 1994, a Bessel Prize from Germany in 2003, and a Humboldt U.S. Senior Scientist Award in 2007. He is a recipient of the 2016 Machine Design Award from ASME for seminal contributions to design of robotic exoskeletons for gait training of stroke patients, and we'll learn more about that. And 2016 Mechanisms and Robotics Award from the ASME for cumulative contributions and being an international leading figure in mechanical design and robotics. In 2023, he received the A.S. Paintal Chair of Indian National Science Academy. He was a plenary speaker at the 2024 IEEE Internal Conference in Robotics and Automation in Yokohama. He was successfully directed 35 PhD theses and has received Best Paper Awards in ASME and IEEE-sponsored robotics conferences. He's the founding editor-in-chief of the journal Wearable Technologies, published by Cambridge University Press, and he organized the IEEE BioRob 2020 conference in New York City and served as conference chair. I think we're very lucky that he'll spend some time with us explaining all this to us, and he'll do it in a way that doesn't expect that we will be his expert peers. But if you have questions, he'll take questions during the talk as opposed to saving them for the end. So don't be shy. Please join me in welcoming Professor Agarwal.
Thank you so much. Hello. First of all, thank you for this wonderful introduction. Welcome to the campus. I'm delighted to see many of you here today. So I will talk about today in an area of robotics. Many of you know that robots have been there in the industry, manufacturing for, say, last 50 years or so. We often see pictures of robots assembling cars or painting those. But what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit different of what we are doing here, where we are saying how we can use robotics close to ourselves, the human body, and how we can use robotics to improve some of those. So the title of my talk is Improving Everyday Human Functions Using Robotics. Also, I have here a QR code. If you're interested in kind of following on some of the papers that I'm going to talk about, you're very welcome to do that as well. So if you think about everyday tasks, we stand, we sit, we reach for objects, we turn our head, we walk, we climb stairs, and we do these things kind of routinely. Right? Many times a day, we don't even think about it. Right? And if you were to sort of think behind the scenes, it is the central nervous system or the peripheral nervous system which coordinates these motions, okay, with the musculoskeletal system. with a lot of feedback that we receive from the visual system, the proprioceptive system, the vestibular system, and so on. Now, behind this is the spinal cord, right, which goes at the back of a body, which is really the conduit, right, that transfers information from the brain to the musculature and takes the information from the musculature back to the brain, right? So essentially, we can track some of these human movements or some of the impairments that happen back to this kind of at a very fundamental level. So imagine, right, somebody who has had a recent stroke, right? Somebody has a spinal cord injury, or somebody has a cerebral palsy, or we are all aging, right? I myself, all of us are aging, right? And these simple tasks that I described earlier to you, they become difficult to us, right? We also think about, let's say, people in our family or community, right? We often sort of find people who have these difficulties. And the question is, what is the solution for these, right? And really, there is no medical pill that you can take and you instantly sort of become better at it. And what you have to really do is kind of go through this whole regime of therapy, right, where you interact with your clinicians, the physical therapists, who help you through a lot of trial and error and repetition, kind of bring you back into that physical loss that you have suffered. So the question is, what is happening in this physical therapy? And there is a whole scientific framework which is called the neural plasticity, right? It is the ability of the brain and the nervous system, right, to change, right, and be able to sort of evolve, okay, because of this repeated practice. And in this motor practice, there is a certain principle that is behind, which is progression towards your normal activity. There's a lot of repetition that goes on. There's a challenge that we provide to the individuals who are undergoing this therapy. And also you are looking at a specific task, whether it's walking, whether it's kind of sitting or reaching, or whatever that is. So what I'm going to do here is today kind of focus on a few of the activities of our daily life. Walking, or maybe sitting and reaching, kind of neck control, kind of some of the cognitive health and so forth. But many of these ideas can be expanded to other functions of our daily life, and you'll see how these things are naturally extendable. So what does our lab do? Our ROAR lab, the goal is to retrain the nervous system through robotics, right? So this is something very unique that we do here in Columbia, right? We have, this whole field has really kind of uniquely involved here with a lot of interaction with the medical center here. And that sort of puts us in a very unique position. Not only have we to kind of know about engineering, but we have to know about neurology, we have to know about different medical diseases and why they happen and how does it impact the nervous system. Now, what we think about this robotics or rehab robotics is really the training wheels on a bicycle, right? So look at this picture in the middle of the slide, right? There's a child who's learning to bike. Right? What do the parents do? Typically put a training wheel, a third wheel. What's the purpose of the third wheel? If the child is unable to balance themselves, okay, this third wheel will provide them help or protection, right? But sooner or later, the child will become skillful in terms of the task of biking, right? And the parents will take away the training wheel because the child doesn't need it, right? And we think of rehab robotics is like those training wheels on the bicycle. Okay, you use this robotics as a way to improve your function, but at some point in time, you don't need that, right? And that's how we see rehab robotics. Now, there are a number of conditions which are called neurodegenerative conditions, right? I mean, we are all getting older, right? It's hard to reverse the age. I mean, we don't like to that, but it's kind of hard, right? Or maybe there are conditions, let's say, diseases like Parkinson's disease or maybe ALS and so forth. These are degenerative diseases, right? And you cannot sort of reverse the course. So in that case, the goal of physical therapy is to maintain your functional level, right? Or become a little bit better than what you're doing, right? So what our lab does is to create technologies and test it on people, right? These are people like ourselves, right? People are older people. We actually recruit a number of patients from the community, right? People with neurological diseases, with stroke, spinal cord injury, and so forth. And And we'll show you how this whole area is emerging. And really, our group is one of the pioneers in this particular field. Now, what I'm going to do here is show you through a few of these technologies. So you see, we have kind of walking here, trunk control, neck control, some of the cognitive health, and so forth. And we'll walk you through some of these through actual details. So you must be wondering why robotics, right? When you have an issue, you don't come to a roboticist, right? You go to a medical doctor, right? But if you think about robotics, inherently it has got two things. It has got sensors, it has got actuators. What the sensors really do is allow you to take data from the human body, right? And that can naturally complement, right, any kind of subjective assessment that the doctor does, okay? Or maybe through questionnaires that you often fill when you go to a medical doctor. Now, robotics also has actuators, and you can really be innovative in terms of designing your actuation around the human body in a way that you can kind of give extra pair of hands to the therapist. Right? So think of this way, you're kind of working with a therapist. I mean, there's a single therapist, he's got two hands, right? He's got sort of cognitive, I mean, he's challenged to the maximum. And the question is, how do you sort of use robotics as a way to facilitate what's being done? Now, as researchers and scientists, we're also interested in asking what-if questions, right? What if I did this intervention in this particular way, as opposed to what is being conventionally done, right? What is the benefit? Or I can use the convention with more informed information, right, from the sensors and so forth that we are using. So what I'm going to do is take you through this journey, right, where you can see how these ideas can actually be applied within the context of the human body. So the way I have my talk arranged here, I'm going to choose 4 functions in this case. Walking, where we're going to look at stroke patients, people with Parkinson's disease, people with cerebral palsy, and then walk you through some of the other functions as well. Now, before we go into this in the details, okay, let me ask a very simple kind of neuroscience question, right? All of us walk. Right? In our daily life, we walk, right? We do that many times a day, right? And while we're walking, we don't really kind of look at where my feet are, right? How do I sort of move? I can talk on a cell phone and so forth, right? And can do all that, right? In some sense, walking is ingrained, right? And there's a typical pattern of walking for everybody, right? Sometimes when you see somebody walking, by looking from behind, you can actually identify who the person is. Right? It is so ingrained, right, within the neuromuscular system. So the question that we asked is, okay, when each of us sort of walks in this unique way, is it possible for us to change the walking pattern of the individual, right? And this is a thought experiment, and in fact, we looked at it from a robotics perspective, and what we did is we created this exoskeleton, which attaches to the leg, right? And the goal of this exoskeleton is to help you relearn a template. Right? And this template is modified from your current template. Right? So what is the template I'm talking about? If you are walking, let's say, on a treadmill, what does your foot do? Right? It basically sort of comes back, moves forward, comes back. Right? So I can think of this as, in the plane, it's a forward, backward, and up and down motion. Right? And there's a repetitive cycle. Maybe somebody could help me in terms of getting the volume cut down a bit. All right. So this is what I have on the top left. Yeah, hello. Yeah. So this is what I have on the top left plot. Right. The x-axis is forward, backward. The y-axis is up and down. So what you're really doing is you're pulling your foot backwards, bending your knee, and come forward, and you have a template. Okay. So now we ask the question: can we change your template? Right? Can we make you walk with longer step length and a smaller step height, right? And you see that there is a little tunnel that we have created today, right? And what we'll do is the robotics would essentially help apply a force on the foot of the person if you deviate too much outside the template, right? So you can think of this as a tube, right, that's shown in the picture. If your foot goes outside the tube, will apply a force, and the force will bring you back into the tube, right? And we can actually modulate the tube over a period of an hour, okay, making it very tight and eventually kind of relaxing it, right? So here is a video of one person walking up here. This is his original template, and this is the template of the same person walking, okay, at the end of 1 hour of training. And in between, the robot was basically providing different kinds of environments with this force field to help the person learn, right? And of course, I mean, whenever we do human studies, I mean, the single individual is not important to us, but we have to look at a collection of individuals. And that's why we created this experiment where we have 3 groups of individuals. One of them is given a visual guidance, the second one is given force guidance through the robot, and the third one is given visual and force guidance, right? And we wanted to understand how well the human learns and retains, right? And the way we basically train is 60 minutes with this robotics, and we look at retention immediately after training, 10 minutes later on, and 2 hours later on, right? So we are looking at learning and retention. Okay, and what you see here on the x-axis are those 3 conditions: immediately after training, 10 minutes later on, and 2 hours later on. And on the y-axis, this the measure which says how well you have learned the new template. Okay, and what you see here is that the group that was given the visual guidance and the force field, they were able to learn, almost go to up to 100%, right? And they were able to retain up to 2 hours later on. But the group that was given only visual guidance, they learned it quickly, but they also kind of lost it all in 2 hours. Okay, and the group that was given only forces, they were able to learn and also retain, right? So what is the message I'm trying to bring about? There are many industrial activities that we do, right? I mean, people are assembling things in the plant, right? They are assembling, let's say, parts of an automobile. Or think of athletes who are learning to do a new skill set, right? And what this basically tells us that the human brain has the ability to learn this new template through the robotics, right? Many of you like to play golf, right? But we may not be the best golf players. And the question we're asking is, can we use robotics as a way to improve your golf swing, right? So these are all kind of possible within the healthy kind of neuromuscular system, right? And what we are interested here, of course, is to go beyond that and look at patients with stroke. Okay, just to give you a perspective, there are about 7 million people in the United States who are living with or who are survivors of a stroke. And these are mind-boggling numbers. About 2% of the U.S. population is actually living with stroke, right? And some of you probably know the stroke is often the strokes are ischemic strokes. That means that the blood supply to the brain is often blocked, and some of the cells die, right? And the cells that were kind of creating those functions, they're not able to sort of execute those functions. So many of these patients with stroke, they would actually survive, right? And they would have residual deficits, and one of the deficits is walking deficit, right? So often, if you see somebody walking in the street and you see somebody walking with a limp, often this was the result of a stroke, right? And people with strokes, they often have a foot, a toe, they have an ankle which they cannot lift very well, and as a result of it, their toes will drag, and as a result of it, they have to kind of compensate with the body and so forth. So the goal here was to see if these patients with stroke can be trained to improve their gait, right? And what you see here is one of our patients who was in our study, right? And this is the video of somebody walking before the robot was used to train them, and the video after the training, after 15 sessions of training. And you can see the quality of their gait in terms of their ability to swing their leg and so forth. So typically somebody with a stroke has a smaller template of the gait. That means they can't sort of swing their leg far enough. And the goal is the robot to help them stretch their gait and eventually come up back to their normal gait. As I said, I mean, often we have to do group studies. And in this case, what we have done here is some, I'll give you some, one of the outcome measures, which is the self-selected walking speed. Not in the robot, but over ground, right? So the training is done with the robot, but of course we evaluate this with the motion capture system over the ground. What I want to show you here is this group data. The yellow data is the speed of walking of these stroke patients on an average before training. It's about 0.6 meters per second, and just to kind of give you perspective, that's typically half the walking speed of a healthy subject, right? So of course we expect that these patients with stroke have a much smaller speed of walking. After the robotic training, if you look at the middle bar here, the blue one, And you can see that that has got bumped up a little bit, not significantly. Okay? But the rightmost plot is 6 months later on, right? So they went home after the robotic training, right? And we did not interact with them. We basically said, whatever you have learned, right, try to sort of keep doing that, right? And what you see here, the patients actually improved their walking speed even further, right? And if you can sort of relate back to the ability of these stroke patients to be more confident, right, crossing the street here on New York City, right? I mean, you have only the light saying 30 seconds that you have to kind of cross the street. But now if you are able to have that ability to go with a faster speed, then you take the chance. Right? And this is not unusual in the stroke literature, because what people have shown is that once the nervous system has changed or starts changing, it has the ability to keep changing over time. Now, over time, we actually created a new exoskeleton, and that's called ALEX2 and ALEX3, which was used in these different studies, because we wanted to understand how does the design of the robot, how does the different interfaces, they all kind of affect the human learning and retention and so forth. So we have a whole series of work along these lines. Now, what we also found out through these experiments that many of these robots are not the most ecological in design. So, for example, our exoskeleton weighed about 20 kilograms. Right? And if you think of, let's say, average weight of individuals are maybe 60 or 70 kilograms. It's kind of 1/3 of the weight of the human body, and that's kind of typically not good. The human joints, if you think about it, these are bones kind of moving relative to each other, right? And while if you make a robotic joint, that's actually fixed act. So there's always a mismatch between the ability from the robot and the machine and so forth. And also our goal is to take some of these ideas out of the lab into the community. I'm happy to sort of pause here and maybe take any questions that the audience may have. Okay? Please feel free, if you have any questions, you can bring them up, because many of these are sort of different studies that you may have seen, and if you have any questions, then you're very welcome to stop me and we can talk about it as we go through. So what we did is, so these are some of the research questions that we worked on in the last sort of 10 years I've been here at Columbia University. And one of the things was, how do you sort of create exoskeletons that are not 20 kilograms, but will have 3 kilograms? And that's where we came with this design called cable-driven exoskeleton. Right? The best way to think about is puppeteering. Right? So these are basically motors that are pulling wires, and these wires are attached to the various human segments. Right? And you can show that by controlling these wires, you can provide forces just like what we saw in our robotic devices. And in fact, our group was one of the first groups to make these exoskeletons with wires. And we first made this arm exoskeleton, and then eventually we had this leg exoskeleton, which we did a number of human studies, both with healthy subjects as well as stroke patients. And these are sort of evolving field here. I mean, a lot of people in our rehab community are sort of copying these ideas into various interventions, and has become a thriving field within the rehab robotics community. Now, the other interesting thing was that whenever we think about training the nervous system, right? If we look at this picture of the child and the mother, right? The mother is helping the child learn to walk. The mother is not taking the leg and the foot and moving in an exoskeleton-like fashion, right? What does the mother do? They would sort of assist the child as you're moving, and if the child is not able to do that, right? They would assist them, right? And so the hands of this mother is very important in terms of how the parent would allow the child to make mistakes, fall down, and eventually get up and try again. And if you think about that, that's a whole physical therapy going on, right, over a period of time. So what we really did is we created a new device. We call it T-Pad, which is a tethered pelvic assist device. It's a belt with lots of wires. And these wires can be controlled to apply forces on the human pelvis as the child is walking, right? Or as anybody is walking, right? And so it's mimicking what you see on the picture on the right. And this is a very kind of a nice environment where you have cameras, you have lots of sensors. You have a real-time control of how you apply forces, so that you can apply the desired force on the pelvis in a way. And we'll see how this can be done to do some of very interesting interventions. So let's see how we can extend these ideas to clinical practice. Here we are looking at children with cerebral palsy, right? Just to kind of give you an idea, but 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children who are born, they are born with cerebral palsy. This is sort of staggering statistics, kind of pretty much kind of around the world, but US is kind of a little bit low. If you go to Africa, a little bit higher, and so forth. So there are about 500,000 children in our community or in our country who have cerebral palsy, right? Who have deficits of various kinds: balance, walking, right? Thinking, right? Do many things. So we are focusing on their walking, right? And what you saw here in this video is this child with cerebral palsy who's got a crouch gait, right? What is crouching means? That you don't walk straight. Your knees are bent, right? And these are unusual loads that you put on the knees. What happens over time, right? I mean, you need to undergo surgery, or eventually you're in a wheelchair, right? And so this is a serious problem of how to help them. And many of these children, when they walk, okay, the picture on the top right is the force that you would apply on the ground when you're walking. And typically when you walk, you have a heel strike, and then you have a push-off, the toe-off, right? So there are 2 peaks that you often see that. Okay, but these children would not be able to do that because they are not doing a heel and a toe. They're typically flat foot or maybe mid-foot or something like that, right? And so their ground reaction is very different from these children. And the question is, how can we use some of our technologies to improve some of these? Yeah? And so we thought of an intervention where we would have them walk on a treadmill, okay, but we apply a downward force on the pelvis of the child, kind of a 10% extra body weight, right? So what's the motivation for this? When you walk, right, your pelvis sort of goes up and down, right? So in the phase that your pelvis is going up, right, it is the knees that actually are kind of providing that upward force, right? And what we're doing is, it is a form of a resistive training, right, where we're putting the extra 10% body weight, and you have to use your knee muscles to be able to extend that. So we had 15 sessions of training. This was done in our medical center with our pediatric physiatrists involved into it. Okay, and this is how the training looked like. They are walking on a treadmill with this downward force being applied to them. Okay, and these are the ground reaction forces, because our treadmill can actually kind of capture those ground reaction forces. And what you see here, early on the training, they don't have those 2 peaks. But by the end of these 15 sessions of training, they're generating those 2 peaks. Okay, but I'm going to show you the video of these children before and after training, right? Not in the robot, okay, but over ground, right? And what I want you to see here is the posture of these children, right? The top video is what you saw earlier on, right? They're children walking with a crouch. And the bottom video, you can see the child is a lot more erect, right? And of course, we have a lot of outcomes that we kind of measure for these children, but this is one of those to show you. Yeah? Now, let's kind of think of another issue, right? Balance, right? Walking and balance is an important part of it, right? I don't know how many of you take a train, but I often take a train to come to the campus. Right? And the train shakes, right? And what you have to do is kind of create the balance, right? And what we're doing here, we are using the same setup to create this a novel way of kind of perturbing the system in the way you want to. Okay? And this is a device that is our medical center. Okay? For the video on the left, you see a force that is being applied forward and backward, right? While the one on the right is actually laterally sideways. And you can really program it to sort of give any force, any direction kind of randomly. Now, we have used this idea in a number of different studies: young people, old people, people with brain, cerebellar diseases, and so forth. But I'm going to show you one where we looked at patients with Parkinson's disease. Right? Just to give you an idea, there are about 1 million people in the United States who have a Parkinson's disease. Right? Some of you probably are following some of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, right, which recently announced that it'll become a big. There'll be a lot of emphasis of that over the next couple of years or so. So what we really did is we wanted to understand if patients with Parkinson's disease, they have the ability to improve their balance in the same way as older adults, right? And we had about an hour-long training session where there would be random sort of perturbations given to them of different magnitude and indirection.
Like Harry Greenwald is getting ready to go skydiving or maybe bungee jumping. But this is actually part of a study to prevent potentially serious falls. Very important because Harry has Parkinson's.
There have been times when I could feel my forward foot not quite grasping the next tread on the stairs. And there are times when we're walking down the sidewalk and I have to remind myself, for posture issues, I should be raising my head and looking ahead because Parkinson's has got me looking down a lot.
40% of people over age 65 suffer a fall at least once a year. That number is much higher for people with Parkinson's because the disease affects their gait and balance. So Dr. Sunil Agrawal at Columbia University has devised a system to teach Parkinson's patients how to keep from falling by training them to recover when this elaborate contraption tries to disrupt their sense of balance.
We give them the experience of being able to recover better from this momentary loss of balance and be able to train their neuromuscular system to be able to be more responsive when a fall appears.
In fact, Dr. Agrawal's study showed that just one training session substantially improved Parkinson's patients' balance and ability to avoid falls. The harness prevents Harry and others from actually falling, of course, and the better they get, the stronger the jolts come, and from different directions. Although Harry had to learn to trust the device.
I relaxed a little and said, okay, I'm not really going to hit the ground here. Hey, it works. The harness really is going to keep me up.
Now, Harry says he's more confident now walking and especially going up and down stairs. The balance disruption system is just at Columbia for now, but it could be rolled out to other medical centers. You only have to prevent a couple of serious falls in Parkinson's patients to make it all cost effective. You learn. It looks a
So as I said, one of our goals is to see how we can take these technologies outside the laboratory into the community, right? And that's where we created a device called a mobile version of the T-pad, right? So all of these wires and the motors are no longer on this fixed platform, but we brought it in the context of a wheelchair or a walker, right? And of course, one of the challenges was that how do you replace the camera system, right? Because now you cannot sort of take a camera system on your walker. And we had to sort of come up with innovative ways to do that using some of the knowledge of robotics and kinematics. Yes?
This is not a technical question. If you start talking to like federal government and Medicare about how you pay for this, because payment for medical issues is a big deal, especially Medicare. Are they looking at this as possibly something they would reimburse?
This is a great question. So anytime some of these technologies are brought into the mainstream of healthcare, right, you need those approvals from the federal government as well as being able to incorporate that within the medical reimbursement procedures, right? And that's one of the hurdles of taking some of these ideas from the laboratory into the community. But the goal of our laboratory is to show the scientific evidence that these things are indeed doable and they can be translated into the community. Yes.
To take the data and recommend, curated programs for like these kids with cerebral palsy.
Absolutely. So even though we didn't talk about in the context of AI, but that's sort of one of our directions of work is how do you take data from these different children who have undergone our intervention and how can sort of use that in a way to kind of form. But these, of course, kind of take time, right? Because so each data point, right? So for a stroke patient or with a cerebral palsy kid, they were here with us in our laboratory for about 9 months. Right? That gives a single data point, and even though in that data point, of course, there are data from each one of the sessions. So we have a lot of data, but on the other hand, in order for us to be able to convince the community that this is an intervention, you have to have large groups of studies. Right? I'm going to show you a little more of that, but these are, again, some of the challenges of taking ideas from the laboratory into the community. Yeah.
In effect, you'd have to go through an FDA approval just as if it was a medical device, right?
Of course, that's exactly right. So I have to go through enough FDA approval in order to sort of take some of that. And all of these technologies that you see are actually licensed. I mean, they are. We have U.S. patents on that, and the Columbia has the right to kind of work with anybody who would like to license it and take it forward and so forth. But we in the university, of course, we look at the basic science of this particular problem because that is what is more dear to us. But all of these technologies, as you see, they are mature to a point where somebody can take it and take it to the community. So coming back here, this is one of the studies that we created this mobile version of the T-pad, and this is something that we tested with patients with stroke. And as you see here, this is the patient working in our laboratory up in the medical center. And what the device really does is, so coming back to the stroke, what is stroke? It's a one-sided impairment. I have a weak side, I have a good side, right? So think of this way, if my right side is weak, right, and left is good, right, so when I'm walking, I have to sort of put my foot on the left and the right. But since I'm not confident on the right side, what would I do? I'll hobble out of that, right? So I'll have an asymmetry in the gait. I'm going to sort of go do something like this, right? Because I don't want to sort of put that much emphasis. However, from a recovery perspective, the goal is to make you bear as much weight on the weak leg. And what our device really does is pulls the center of mass of the rope of the human body each time the right foot strikes the ground. So each time my right foot up the ground, I'm actually putting more weight on the ground and ask you to bear with and kind of generate the muscle forces that is required for you to do some of that. And we have studies to show that through this kind of approach, you can create a mechanistic model of how you train the human body to be equally balanced on both of the legs. So let me kind of move on to a little different task. And in this case, we are looking at the upper body, right? We're looking at the core of the body, right? Okay, and we know that core is very important, right? We talk about walking, but now let's think about the upper body, right? All of you are sitting right now, okay? If you try to reach forward, right, see how far can you reach before your body becomes unbalanced. Not with your arm, but sort of move your trunk around, right? And what you can see here, everybody has a certain area around which you feel comfortable, right? You can go forward and be able to come back. If you repeat the same thing along 8 directions, you'll create a boundary, right? A boundary like this here, right? For healthy subjects, this boundary looks almost circular, right? Okay, maybe a little bit kind of elliptical, but by and large circular. But if you think of a patient with cerebral palsy or with a spinal cord injury, this particular envelope will look very, very different. Maybe they have the ability to sort of go forward, but not one sideways, right? Because they don't have the ability to be able to control their body. So one of our goals is to see how we can improve the trunk control of individuals, right? And you can think about this need for trunk control, not only in a disease, right? Older individuals who are sitting on a chair, right? They're afraid to kind of move around, right? And some of this technology could be equally beneficial for them as well. So what does the robotics do? Okay, so in this case, the same wire idea is a belt on the trunk, right? And what this belt really does is, if you go too far out at the boundary, right, it provides a hand support, right, or a force through the wires, right? Effectively, what you can do is you can create a donut around you with a force field, right? So each time you hit this wall of the donut, essentially you get a restoring force, right? And you can program this restoring force, okay, where you place the donuts, how much force you apply, and so forth, okay? And we see how we can use this to improve upper trunk control in children. Okay, so these are children with cerebral palsy who come to our laboratory. Okay, here's a child. Okay, he cannot walk, he can only sit, right? But he doesn't have ability to be able to control his trunk, and the goal is to improve his trunk control. What the therapist is trying to do is to kind of measure the workspace around which the child can actually move the trunk and be able to come back to the normal, right? And then, of course, it's integrated with cameras and all the robotics and all the wires to be able to provide tension. And this is what the therapist sees in real time. Okay, where the specific points on the trunk is in space over time. Okay, and you can create this kind of a workspace like this, which says what is your reach in the forward direction, sideways direction, diagonal directions, and so forth, so that we have a boundary. And the goal will be to expand this boundary over training. Okay. So what does the therapist do while the intervention happens, right? So the child is playing games with this individual, and this donut-like force field is put at the boundary of the child, right? Wherever the boundary or his boundaries are, right? And the goal is to be able to expand it and challenge him, sort of to make it symmetrical and large over time. Okay. And of course, these children go through 12 sessions of training with us, and this is an outcome that you see with this child. Okay, before training, right? See how much ability the child has in terms of moving his trunk forward, maybe it's about a cone of maybe 10 or 20 degrees or so. By the end of the training, the child is able to go all the way up to 80 degrees and come back, right? So this is data from 3 children who were there in our pilot study, right? And on the x-axis is the number of training sessions, which goes from 0, 1 to 12. And there's a post-training and a 3-month follow-up, right? On the y-axis is the area of reach, right? And our goal was to make it larger, right? And also more circular, okay? And what you see here, that area keeps on increasing with training, right? And once the training stops at 12 sessions, some of that is lost, but on the other hand, still is better than what it was before. Okay, so we are currently doing a clinical trial funded by the National Institute of Health, where we'll bring in 85 children from our community. It's actually a nationwide program, okay, where the children are coming into a laboratory, they undergo this training, and we look at what is the outcome change in terms of the reach. So let me show you.
We came from Florida, so it was a long way. Everyone here is so kind, made her feel so at home.
I liked all the games.
She plays a lot more with you guys, doesn't she?
She can throw balls better.
If she's eating, she will be able to stand up on her own and then reach over the table and grab some stuff. And she used to not do that at all. And she does her hair in the mornings now.
Right. So even though with the outcomes that I showed you were these workspace outcomes, right? But they change the quality of the life of the child in terms of the daily activities that they can do, right? And you can think of expanding these ideas to other population groups. And in fact, we have done some of that, right? So this is some study that we have done with patients with spinal cord injury, right? Just kind of give you a perspective. Okay, according to Dana and Reese Foundation, there are about 300,000 people in the United States who have a spinal cord injury, right? And spinal cord injury is the kind of damage to the group of wires that are going from your brain to your musculature, right? And depending on where your injury happens, I mean, you would kind of lose functional activity. So in this case, we took an individual from our community, right? He had a spinal cord injury about maybe 22 years before this he went to an intervention, right? And what we showed here is through about 5 training sessions, right? This is on the left here is his workspace of the trunk center, right? And you can see that he actually has a good forward reach, but not as much sideways or backwards. By the end of training, if you look at the area, almost like a circular one, right? That he has a good ability to sort of move in every direction and so forth. Also, there are a number of outcome measures. One of the big outcome measures is how much time does it take you to put on your T-shirt and take it off? Right? Just think through this. What is involved in terms of putting on a T-shirt? Right? You have to really kind of go through all of this maneuver of your body, right? And sometimes you don't even have your vision to be able to do that, right? And what we were able to show is that this individual was able to decrease that T-shirt wearing on and off time to almost half. Right? So there's a huge potential to be expanded into the community. Right? And as I mentioned here, some of this technology not only sort of applies to patients with injury, but just old people in our community, nursing homes, right, where people don't have the ability to be able to sort of move around and so forth. So, I mean, there's a huge potential of something like this for us. Now, another big project for us is to get people who are spinal cord injured patients who are in a wheelchair to stand up, right? Because this is a moonshot problem, right? How can you have people who are on a wheelchair to stand up and walk, right? And you can think about what does it take to have people stand up, right? These are people who have a severe injury, right, on their spinal cord, right? They are all the time on the wheelchairs, right? And so we have this project right now is how do you help to train them to stand, right? And we know that the standing is the first step before you can walk, right? And here's a picture of one of the training sessions with one of our collaborators who is at University of Louisville. There's a whole spinal cord injury center that we work with. And there is a new technology. It is called epidural stimulators, right? What it is a patch that you can put on the spinal cord, and you can electrically stimulate it. And what has been shown is that when you electrically stimulate this patch, you generate more signals on your muscles, right? Okay, so think of this way: if I don't have muscle signals, I can't kind of keep myself, I can't support myself, right? But any functional movement requires coordination of this muscle, right? So I need a higher activity, but I also need to learn how to coordinate these muscles, right? The way the training is being done here, if you look at this picture on the right here, on the left, is there's a handlebar, right, that people use. And as you're stimulating the spinal cord and you're generating more muscles, signals, okay, you're using the hand as a way to kind of do the balance control. But you think that's counterintuitive, right? If you were in a crowd, right, and you have a bad, or you didn't have the ability to do a posture control, I mean, this handlebar would not magically appear in front of you, right? And our goal is to see how we can bring that back into the individual itself, right? And this is where we actually created this two belts, one on the pelvis, another trunk, right? And these belts can actually apply forces. They can create scenarios where you can perturb at the upper body or the lower body and see if you can, and how you generate your muscle signals and so forth. So we did a study with 5 seriously injured spinal cord injured patients. There's a scale called ASIA A and B. A and B are the people who just don't have a control on the body, right? And what we're able to show is that through this training with this robotics, okay, these patients can actually stand by themselves. And many of them actually can do kind of self-initiated movements. And some of these results kind of have just appeared in a journal on neurotrauma reports and things like that. And we have another grant for the next 5 years, and we are working with this Kessler Foundation. I don't know how many of you know Kessler Foundation. This is actually about 18 miles from here in New York City. This is one of the number one spinal cord injury rehab hospital in the country. And we have actually installed a system over there, and we are working with the patients over there to bring it to them. So let's kind of move on to a little bit here in a little bit different direction. Columbia has this institute called the ALS Institute, and it's also called the Lou Gehrig disease or Lou Gehrig Institute. It's called ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Many of you probably kind of remember Stephen Hawking, who was alive. It is a progressive or a neurodegenerative disease, and part of it, it logically happens because of the death of certain alpha motor neurons, which actually kind of connect with the musculature to be able to sort of generate these muscle signals. So patients with ALS, of course, they lose the ability to kind of move their body, right? The only thing that they can do eventually kind of use their eyes to connect with and so forth. So one of the problems that we looked at is how do we sort of bring in their ability to make their head and neck move, right? Because when I'm talking with you, right, I'm not just kind of in one posture. I'm kind of using my head, neck, right, and eyes in a way to coordinate and interact with you. So these individuals don't have that ability, right? So our lab was one of the first labs to create this neck robotic exoskeleton, right? And here we are kind of showing you the usage of this to a patient with severely injured, or not injured, but severe ALS patient, to facilitate them to kind of move their head neck in response to a certain avatar on the screen. And this whole idea of head neck control is very unique to our work here. We have actually got new NIH grants to see how we can use the neck brace to help recover the neck control for patients with cerebral palsy. Also, a lot of older individuals have neck pain, right? So we work actually with our doctors at the medical center to see if we can characterize why these neck pain happen and what we can do and some of that. So some of those diseases are called the cervical spondylosis. So there's a lot of uncharted territory out here in terms of head neck control, right? Our new generation kind of looks at computer screens all the time, right? We have cell phones and so forth, right? I mean, this is how our neck posture is, right? So maybe 20 years down the road, we'll all see these changes or I mean, the need for being able to sort of help rehabilitate some of them. So a little bit about sensory dysfunction, right? What is sensory dysfunction, right? We know where we are in space through various signals, right? Eyes, vestibules, right? Proprioception, right? If they mess up, I don't know where I am, right? So what the brain really does is takes all of this sensory information and then integrates to know what to do. Right? So if you think about, let's say, in the night going to the bathroom, right? Your eyes can see things, right? But you don't rely as much. What do you rely on? Right? Some of your vestibular information or touch information and so forth, right? So because you can't rely very much on the visual information because that's not as important, right? And so what we really do is look at how we can put in noise in the So what we're doing is we are putting noise in the various sensory channels and see how that affects your gait and balance and walking. Right? And here we have these people from our community where we actually recruit them to see how their gait and balance changes as a result of these various perturbations that can provide to them. And these are all portable systems. We can take out the communities. In fact, some of this was actually taken from a senior center in Delaware. What we're able to show is that people who are older people, they've got more gait variability and balance variability. And I don't think it's a surprise to any of us, but that we have kind of a formal method of characterizing some of that. Let's come to another important part of the society. I mean, we know that with age, some of our cognitive ability or the memory, right, or our task execution, some of that changes, right? And there are about 15 million people in the United States with a mild cognitive impairment, right? And some of them actually will progress into dementia, like Alzheimer's and things like that. I mean, the current data is about 5 million people actually have Alzheimer's right now in the country. And that sort of interferes with your ability for memory, decision-making, and execution, and so forth. And one of the tests that people have found out is called a floor maze test, right? So they create a little maze on the floor, and they show you the maze and then let you recall that maze and see how you can navigate through the maze, right? And how much time it sort of takes you there. And that's often correlated with their cognitive scores and things like that. And what our lab did is created a virtual version of the floor maze test. We call it a virtual reality floor maze test. And that allows us to change the maze, the complexity of that. You can sort of simulate, let's say, when you're coming to Columbia from your home, right? You have certain landmarks or things like that, right? And you can sort of create that and see how people respond to that. And we feel that some of this would be very, very important for us to be able to screen people who may have cognitive impairments. So really, as we grow older, there are a number of fronts, right, where we all diminish, right? The walking, of course, gait, the balance, the cognition, right? But they're all interrelated to each other. Right? Even though we treat, let's say, balance as separate from cognition, but they are somehow interrelated together. And one of the important sort of holy grail problem in our rehab robotics is how do you create these machines and devices that let you improve all of these factors together, right? Not only the gait or the balance, but also cognitive health. And we did a recent study, and we just published it. We recruited about 60 individuals from our medical center community up there. And what we were able to show is that, and all of them actually walked with our mobile keypad, right, the one that you saw earlier on. And as they are walking, we perturb them, dither them, right, and they have to kind of do the balance. And what we were able to show is that the group that was, who was the experimental group, they benefited in terms of walking, balance, and cognition, right? So we are able to show that there are technologies that will improve all three facets, which are very important in terms of your human health and so forth. And of course, I mean, there'll be more of these devices in the future. So what have I kind of showed you here? I mean, this rehabilitation robotics is a growing field, right? People think of robots as things in the industry, right? But we are sort of bringing it closer to people, right? According to the World Health Organization, okay, and there's a GATE initiative, what it says that over 1 billion people in the world who have a need for assistive technology, right? I mean, it's a mind-boggling number, right? This $1 billion people. Now, the elderly population in the United States, right, in the next 25 years is going to double, right? I mean, we already know the demographics. I mean, there are many parts of the world which is already there, right? Go to Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and so forth. They're already there. right? And we need technologies to be able to sort of help people in terms of their function, right? Also, this impairment demography, I talked about statistics from the United States, but if you go around the world, by and large, the same statistics sort of is there, right? So many of the technologies that we are sort of talking about here, they can be equally expanded to other places in the world. What we saw here, the small changes in the function that we can bring out in the life of people, that actually has a big impact on the quality of life, right? So it's not just a kind of a measure of the workspace and things like that, but all of that sort of indirectly affects so many other things that'll affect your quality of life. So here's the key takeaways and my outlook here. I mean, first of all, I said that these rehab systems, right? And over the years, we have kind of built a number of these and tested out with people and so forth. Well, the design should be ecologically valid from the perspective of training the nervous system, right? Because a lot of fashion in our community is that people bring an exoskeleton, build an exoskeleton, and they think that that's the end of it. Okay, but you have to go back and say it's the ability to kind of design something interactive, right, for that specific purpose. Also, some of the training methodology that these machines have to interface with the human body, that also has to be designed according to the principles or the neurophysiological principles, and which is sort of often overlooked by people in our community. And whatever we design and build, we have to demonstrate the scientific feasibility of that, right? They could be long, right? For our strokes, 9 patients with stroke took us 5 years. Right? So if you are a graduate student in the audience, you'll say, I would write 1 paper after 5 years. Right? But the point is that we do need that, right? Unless you are able to demonstrate the feasibility of your ideas scientifically, right? It is not going to be adopted in practice. And some of these multi-session training that we do here in Columbia, they are very unique. I mean, not very many people around the world are even thinking about this. So we are really ahead of the game, but on the other hand, it's a difficult process, and we are able to get there only with a lot of difficulty. So my vision for the future here is we have to bring rehab robotics to our home and the community, right? Just like you have an Alexa, right, in your home. Right, you have to sort of bring these rehab robotics into your home, right, into the community to impact people, right? And I mean, after all, I mean, at the end of the day, we all ask the question, how have we impacted the society, right? What can be a better thing to do than be able to improve, let's say, the human health, and be kind of bring that ability to have these functional movements in people you love and your community. So. I'm going to stop here. I'll just let a bunch of these videos play. These are just different videos from our laboratory. I didn't talk about any of these here, but these are cool videos for you to see. But we can take any questions that you may have.
Just curious, in terms of, like, you'd mentioned, like, 12, 15-week program. Like, for the neuroplasticity to really take effect, like, we've heard things about it takes, like, 10,000 hours to master something. Where do you think the optimal amount of time that it's going to take to get, I don't know, 2/3 back to normal?
Yeah. So this is a great question. How much time does it take, let's say, for a stroke patient to be able to learn this new functional movement? And of course, I mean, when we do these studies, I mean, we kind of scout the literature and see what has worked in the past, right? And we choose sort of an optimal time window so that it's not too less and also it's not too excessively large, right? Because any kind of studies that we do kind of requires people and personnel and so forth, and the cost and so forth. So typically what we found is something like a 15 training sessions, roughly about an hour each or so. So maybe about somewhere between, say, 12 to 24 hours of active exercise is sufficient to kind of show some of the neuroplasticity. Yeah, but on the other hand, whether that's the best for everybody, we don't know, right? And it may sort of be longer and shorter depending on what the activity is.
Thank you for a terrific lecture. Do you do much work with the military? Because there's so much, disability from combat. And I'm sure they have funding. or I hope they do. And I was just curious if are you working with the military? I know some of these things obviously don't apply, but people have had injuries, have gait problems, and
absolutely correct. So so there is a VA in Bronx. So the VA Center in Bronx, we actually actively work with them for some of our spinal cord injury work. So we recruit a number of patients from there. And also there is a lot of people who undergo blasts, right? So so that actually creates sort of concussion, brain health, cognitive impairments, and things like that. So we work with some of the therapists at the medical center who treat patients from there. So you're right. I mean, there are lots of programs within the military that could actively fund some of this research. But by and large, our goal is to kind of show the science, show that in a limited group of people, these things are doable, and eventually, hopefully at some time, be scalable as well.
you've done the years of research and you've proven the prototypes work. And it seems to me a major issue is the scaling. So, and the military could be really, it seems to me, could be key to putting in, like DARPA or somebody, I don't know who would do this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I mean, if I look at the previous question that was sort of brought in, how do you make that as a part of our healthcare system, right? And that is a bigger hurdle because you have to go through some of the federal FDA approvals and see how you can incorporate that within the reimbursement. But you're right. I mean, many of these technologies are shown to work, right? In fact, if you look at the healthcare guidelines within the Veteran Administration, they say that any kind of stroke therapy or stroke recovery, which was being done earlier on with physical therapists, can also be done with robotics as well, right? So there are guidelines slowly emerging within the different segments of the healthcare, where they are saying that yes, it's okay to do. There is now evidence that in fact this is translatable and so on. This is within the Veterans Administration. Yeah. They're right. I mean, because all of their insurance comes from them, so they are able to implement that within their insurance system.
Could you comment on which government agencies do provide funding for your research?
So a lot of our funding comes from the National Institute of Health. And those of you who are familiar with it, I mean, we have to actually kind of write a proposal. There's kind of year of kind of going back and forth before it gets approved. So they are one of our major funding agencies. We also get money from the New York State has a spinal cord injury research board, and they have also been funding some of that as well. And that has been sort of a great resource for us to be able to translate some of these to actual patients at Louisville or up here at the Kessler Institute.
Professor, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're so pleased.
Thank you so much.
Proud to be part of what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And everything that you described